Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a long time, but we are back here on Fantasy Daily to start talking about the new league year, because that's right, it is time to gear up for next season. The new league year begins tomorrow, so you probably got notifications all on your phone. Trying to make sense of it, what's going on. I got the summary for you right here coming up. Thanks for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. We are back. I am back with you, and I am so excited finally to get back here on Fantasy Daily. It's been a while. Obviously, if you follow the show, you know I didn't really finish out the last season. I put way too much on my plate, starting a new job, trying to keep food on the table for the daughter, get the family all in order and everything. It's a lot to take in. So I appreciate y'all staying with me, staying back. You got those notifications on, you subscribe, so you got the bells every time I upload a show. I do have a little bit of context for what the show will be this year. There will be a season 3. So in August, we will be back. I will be back trying to do this full time. I'm really trying to structure my life so I can do this because I don't want to get away from it. But also I still have bills to pay and whatnot. So obviously, I am 30 years old. I should be doing something else, but I cannot get away from fantasy football, and I will not let this go. I love being here, and I love hanging out with you guys talking football. So we will have season 3. I'm going to sprinkle some shows in. Obviously, we're going to talk about combine, draft stuff. We're going to be talking about the players that I like in the draft, dynasty stuff, gearing up for draft days and stuff like that. So we got a lot coming soon, but we are going to be talking today about the new league year, some combine stuff, and some trade rumors before they go. But as you can see on the picture behind me, we can get right into it and talking about Derek Carr, because he got the bag today. Derek Carr, no longer a Raider. He is with the Saints now on a 4-year, $150 million deal with $100 million guaranteed. So Derek Carr apparently showed the Saints exactly what they wanted to see. They liked, the deal. Obviously, Derek Carr liked the deal, but they liked the sides, and I think that this could be pretty good for Derek Carr. So unfortunately, the defense really was what was the Raiders' biggest undoing in the last few years. I don't think that this whole thing is Derek Carr. I don't think Derek Carr's washed up and turns into like a Kirk Cousins guy where you really can't depend on him in fantasy. Derek Carr was super solid for fantasy. He's been super solid for fantasy. So as much as I don't think Derek Carr is going to be this showstopper in New Orleans, he will be serviceable. He will be rosterable. You can hang on to him. But I think this also gives Chris Olave a huge bump. As much as Jameis Winston was there and they were doing their thing, it was kind of a gadget game. Every now and Taysom Hill would be in. You didn't know what you could trust with Jameis Winston, who will now be released. But Derek Carr is the guy now, and I do think that this is good for the Saints. So if you are a Saints fan, I would be happy that I got Derek Carr. There's a lot of bad quarterbacks out there. I'm a Patriots fan. I got Mac Jones. At this moment, I'd rather have Derek Carr than Mac Jones. And, I just don't think Mac Jones is that guy. I think he's a bridge quarterback, like we've discussed a lot. But Derek Carr, he's a serviceable quarterback. There's a lot worse that you can do out there, so if anybody's trying to throw shade at Derek Carr or the Raiders for this is a good move, and I think it gives a big bump to Chris Olave as well. I really like Chris Olave's upside, so if you are in a dynasty startup draft, or even talking about redraft leagues, when you think about it, Chris Olave is going to be a huge bet this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he fills kind of like that Jacoby Myers role that he had over there, or maybe even kind of like that T. Higgins role in Cincinnati, where it's not every game that he's exploding, but you do have extremely high upside with a really good floor. So I'm really excited for Chris Olave with Derek Carr on the Saints. So Raiders now are void of a quarterback, but they could be rolling with Stidham. There is a report that there is some speculation that they might roll with Jarrett Stidham for the year. I do not believe that will happen. They are drafting currently at 7, but I do expect McDaniels to make some moves, potentially move up, because there are very limited names in this draft class for quarterbacks. There's only about 4 of them. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But besides that, it's kind of hit or miss towards the end. You have 4 quarterbacks that you can probably put some stock in that I do believe teams up front will be, looking at. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I do believe that the Raiders will not roll on with Stidham. As much as, you have Josh McDaniels there, Stidham was with him in New England. I don't think that that's going to be the team's go-to right now. When you got somebody like Devontae Adams, when you got Josh Jacobs, they're in a spot where they want to win. They want to get to the playoffs. They want to be a contender. And Josh McDaniels, I know in his heart, believes that they are a contender. So I do believe that they're going to do something big at quarterback. I don't think they're going to roll into this season with Jarrett Stidham. So we'll see. But after that, Jets and Panthers are now still without the quarterback. They were the ones in on Derek Carr, so maybe there's still some more rumors about Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets. I do believe that Aaron Rodgers and Lamar will stay put, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. As far as the Aaron Rodgers saga goes, I'm not touching it. If you followed the show last year, we said it, Aaron Rodgers is going to play for him. We already know it. I don't want to talk about Aaron Rodgers anymore because he's the superstar diva who just wants to be in the conversation with Brady and Josh Allen and all of them. We're not putting you in that conversation. It's not happening. I lost my pencil and my fidget device. But it seems every year we're doing with Aaron Rodgers. He wants to play the diva game. He wants to play these games with, media and stuff like that. Get on the field. Because every single year you seem to fall short. And you can blame it on the defense, you can blame it on whatever, but you've been there too long for you to look at some other team now and go, that's my best option of winning. No, Aaron Rodgers' best chance of winning is in Green Bay. He's going to stay in Green Bay if he does play. You can't turn down the money like it, so I'm done with the Aaron Rodgers saga. It's right there in front of our face. It's like he just wants his name to be in the conversation. It's superstar diva mode, and I'm over it. Even though I just spent 3 minutes ranting about it. But anyway, let's move on to some trade rumor mills because this is fantasy football, and what else better is there in fantasy football than making trades? Screwing over your friends, getting screwed over by your friends. It's the best part. Trading over some stuff. Who did I trade? I think I traded a bunch to get Nick Chubb at the beginning of the year. Nick Chubb didn't do great at all, so it was pretty fun. Or no, I traded Nick Chubb away. He did fantastic. That's what it was. Sorry. The guy I got in return did not do great at all, and I don't even remember who it was because it was that bad. But let's talk about the rumor mill. Number one right now that we got that everybody's talking about is DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I am a Patriots fan, so I've been hearing all the rumors of DeAndre Hopkins to New England. I don't think that New England is one wide receiver away from being a good team, so I do not consider New England Patriots to be in anywhere of the realm of being available for DeAndre Hopkins. I do believe that he will go for a contender, and I would not put it past a team to basically break the bank to go and get DeAndre Hopkins. Somebody like Buffalo probably can't afford them, but a team that is really in the running for this, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out there and break the bank. There is one team that I really would like to see go to, and that's the Jaguars. I know it sounds lame, but if you put Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, and DeAndre Hopkins on the same field with Trevor Lawrence, whew, oh man, I would love that so bad. So I really want DeAndre Hopkins to go to the Jags. We'll talk about the Jags in a little bit because they've been basically my off-season topic that I've been talking to everybody about. I know the Super Bowl was only a month ago, but they really have been the team that I've been talking about more than anybody throughout the offseason, or so far through the offseason. So we'll talk about them in a little bit. The next name that we want to bring up is Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson definitely will be traded because they're looking for somebody to eat that portion of their contract. So it could be a thing where maybe Allen Robinson goes over to Arizona and Nook comes over to the Rams. Could see Nook on the Rams. That would be absolutely insane. Would love to see that. But I don't believe that's going to happen because of the way that the Rams are kind of deteriorating now that they went broke for the Super Bowl. They won a Super Bowl out of it, but this is on the back end of it now. So once you sell out for all those stuff, this is the back end of that. You can't really get much more winning out of that once people start leaving. So I don't see them going anywhere. Allen Robinson, I do believe, will be traded to a team that can, he can basically go anywhere because it's not much contract that they're trying to make him eat for Allen Robinson. I think it's 14 over 2 years, which is $7 million a year, which isn't fantastic for them, but it's not a lot for a team to shy away from a person like Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson still has some in the tank, whether or not you want to admit it or not. You can do a lot worse at wide receiver than Allen Robinson. So he will go somewhere, he will get paid, and I'm excited to see where Allen Robinson ends up and how he does contribute to that team, being the year that we just saw with Allen Robinson. So excited for that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is another name that is on the trade block, and he will be traded. If not, he will not be on that team this year. Isaiah Pacheco will be a fantasy stud next year. So if you tune into this show in the offseason, you're going to get these little tidbits throughout the offseason going into draft year. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be that name that you want. And even in dynasty startup drafts, I might take Pacheco over a couple of these running backs. Right now, if I had, to take a running back in dynasty startups, I would take Pacheco over Bijan Robinson. And Bijan Robinson's probably going to go to a team that's going to use him as a workhorse. I don't know if that's the case for whoever else goes behind Bijan Robinson, but personally right now, I do believe that Isaiah Pacheco is one of those names that are out there that are just, going to be a superstar stud in fantasy football, especially PPR. and I'm excited for it. So I do believe that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is out of there, and we might not see him surface on a team as far as, consistency and value ever again. Because as we saw in Kansas City, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was just not that guy. He barely ever got above 21 fantasy points. We used to joke about it all the time. I think he did it twice. But I don't think the CEH explosion is going to be anywhere. So it'll be kind of a moot point to see where he goes. It'll probably be one of those things where it's like Leonard Fournette. Obviously, Leonard Fournette had a great year. He is also going to be dropped as of Tuesday. Leonard Fournette will be dropped just to roll over into that point. So I expect him to go somewhere. I think Leonard Fournette's going to go somewhere like Dallas, where they're kind of having a little bit of running back trouble and they just want to throw more depth in there without having to draft somebody. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I do expect him to fit in that role somewhere where he goes on a team, he's the 1 or 2, and he kind of just bounces back and forth and basically becomes fantasy irrelevant. So I think that is it for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If he is in your league and you are in Dynasty, it is time to trade him, give him away. Brandon Cooks also likely being dealt. We knew that from last year. As the Patriots fan, I'm going to say I do believe that he goes to either New England or the Rams because he has played for them. Would like to see Brandon Cooks go to the Saints, but I do believe that if they are going to pick somebody, it's going to be either a drafted guy or they're going to go out and get somebody now that they have Derek Carr. So I do expect the Saints to draft a wide receiver now that they have Derek Carr, or they're going to reach up and go trade for something or whatever. But Brandon Cooks, I would like to see him go to the Saints, but I do think that he goes back to New England. It's just that perfect fit. New England is clearly going to make a move this season for wide receiver. They've done it for tight end. They still got Jonnu Smith. I expect Jonnu Smith to be released. Or at least restructured or something. They're not going to use Jonnu like they, signed him when they signed him for. So I do believe that wide receiver is going to be something that they go for, and Brandon Cooks is going to fit right into that alley of what do we need right now, what can we afford, and you never see New England break the bank. Last time we did it was for Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, which aren't the names that you would pick out of a hat if you said New England spent money on something. So it's not going to be on DeAndre Hopkins. It'll likely be for a guy like Brandon Cooks where he's kind of mid-tier, but you can pay him bottom-of-the-barrel money. So I expect Brandon Cooks to definitely be dealt out of Houston. He does not want to be in there anymore, so New England and the Saints are probably my 2 number 1 picks for them. And while we're here on the topic, this is a good time to bring up free agent bingo. If you guys haven't done that with me ever, basically every year when it's coming towards your draft season, you can reach out to your league, say, hey, here's some bingo cards. Put some free agents on there, list 3 teams that you think they're going to go to. If they go to that team, you get that square. As soon as somebody gets a bingo, they can call bingo and say, I want to draft from the 5th slot, the 6th slot. They get to choose their draft position. So if you guys would like a bingo card, go ahead and reach out to me. I'm not going to drop the link in it and all the stuff that I did last year because nobody used it anyway. So if you do want it, let me know. I'll try to get it to you. But besides that, I'm not going to go through the whole effort to put it in there this year. The last trade rumor we have is Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen was a part of the trade rumors a couple weeks ago where it was he's going here, he's going to do this, he's going to do this, he's not happy. GM shut down all of that. They just got Kellen Moore in the building. They're very excited for the way that the Kellen Moore ran Dallas. Obviously, you had some trouble between Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore. We'll get to that comment in a second because it was a lot to unpack. It was really funny. Usually, I try not to get into this on the show because it weighs it down, but since we're in off-season mode, we might as well make fun of Mike McCarthy a little bit. And I was a fan of Mike McCarthy, but after those comments, Mike McCarthy is up the creek without a paddle, and it's probably his last year coaching. Probably Mike McCarthy's last year coaching. So Keenan Allen rumors quickly shut down by the GM, and I completely believe that. You got Justin Herbert, you got Eckler, you got Keenan Allen, you got Mike Williams. Now you finally got an offensive coordinator that you believe in. I do believe that they are going, or somebody to run the offense that they believe in, and I do feel that this team is going to be at full power this year. You're going to see the Chargers that we've been waiting 3 or 4 years to see with Justin Herbert. So very, very excited for that team. Now let's move on to Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore. The comments made about Kellen Moore from Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy says Kellen Moore just wanted to light up the scoreboard and I'm telling him to run the damn ball. So basically Mike McCarthy is saying, I want a run first, not always passing team. Well, if you go look at the split, they were almost 50-50. I think they had 20 more pass attempts than they had rushing attempts. So this is just a really bad look for Mike McCarthy that we are staring at the stats. Everybody's staring at the stats, but it doesn't seem that he's doing that or he's not looking at it. So it could have been out of pocket. It could have been something he says, but for him to throw his old offensive coordinator under the bus for all the failures after Dak wasn't playing and he was just abysmal. You had a guy come in who, arguably played better than Dak. The team itself wasn't using Pollard and Zeke the way they should have been, and everybody in the world who watches a Dallas football game can see Zeke is not what he was. Pollard was better, and then he got injured. So just the whole dynamic of the Cowboys running backs in itself was kind of wonky in the way that they were doing it, but Mike McCarthy doubled down today. He franchise tags Tony Pollard after the injury. Now, I love this. And I hate this. I love that Pollard is going to remain with the Cowboys because I do believe there's a reality where Pollard is the starter next year and Zeke gets traded or whatever it may be. But I hate that somebody who just got injured gets the franchise tag, because now if he gets injured again next year, that might be the it for his career. That might be it for Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard clearly was making a name for himself. He was worth a damn throughout the season. He was giving you those points on your team, even when you were scared of, starting him. And it was a 1A, 1B. For him to be the 1B next to Ezekiel Elliott, that's a lot to say about Zeke and the way that that team runs. Because you have to impress Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is the one that's saying, this team runs through Zeke. This team runs through Zeke. Well, Jerry Jones, Zeke kind of sucks. So if you have Zeke kind of sucking and Dak kind of sucking, you need to be playing Pollard. You need to be using your strengths, and they just aren't. So I'm not putting that on Kellen Moore. I'm putting that on Kellen Moore having to listen to Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy while he's trying to run his offense. And I don't blame him for getting out of Dodge. I don't blame him for saying, as soon as an opportunity comes up, I'm freaking taking it. And he did. I'm excited to see Kellen Moore go over to the Chargers and do what he can do there. I hope that the Chargers are the ones to, have that explosion this year and be that team that takes the next step. That way they can kind of rub it in their face over in Dallas, because you got to get the owner out of the locker room. You have to. You have to. And Jerry Jones especially, get out of the locker room, man. Get out of there, because your playoff wins, it's not there. It's not there enough for you to be talking. So watching this Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore thing go on kind of just solidified to me that the Cowboys are going to be a mess this year, and Mike McCarthy's on the hot seat. It's his last year coaching, and I'm willing to put money on that. So as I aforementioned it before, I do believe that Leonard Fournette will be picked up by somebody like the Cowboys, and I do believe the Cowboys will kind of go out and do their due diligence on getting another running back, since they are so diehard on, we're going to run the ball this year. So your offensive line isn't what it used to be. You're losing more and more people every day. You're losing more people on the defense. So it just seems like the Dallas Cowboys can't get with the times. They still think it's the first year that they drafted Zeke, and they're still trying to chase that magic that they're one of the best running teams, and they're just not. You saw, the Colts, which as much as the Colts had issues, they moved away from the running game when it wasn't working at times. So you got to get away from it, Dallas. You have to be like water, and they just aren't. So embarrassing for Dallas. Let's move on. Let me scream out a couple more points, because I don't want to keep you for the full half hour today. I do appreciate y'all joining me once again back here on Fantasy Daily. Very excited to be back. Very excited to be putting shows together for you. Look how excited Derek Carr is. Look at how excited he is to be back. Fantasy Daily, baby. Look, he's got a Fantasy Daily microphone. How cool is that? Anyway, moving on to the Giants. Let's talk about the Giants and how Daniel Jones wants $45 million a year. Well, Daniel Jones, let's unpack this a little bit, because you have Saquon Barkley, who's about to be a free agent unless they pay him. Apparently, they're not close on deals. The team for Daniel Jones is meeting with the Giants in New Jersey today to go over their deals and hopefully reach a contract agreement. Unless Daniel Jones really comes off this ledge of money that he does not deserve, I do not think that they're going to reach an agreement. If that's the case, they keep Saquon, they move on from Daniel Jones, they come and get another quarterback in the draft, whatever it may be. But I do not see a reality, and it's probably not possible for them to pay Daniel Jones $45 million a year and keep Saquon Barkley. You can hit the franchise tag on one of them, but if you lose Saquon Barkley, you either lose him this season or you lose him next season. So you have to choose. They're in a really tough situation right now, and to be honest, I'd probably lean the way of Saquon Barkley. You've had Daniel Jones for how many years now? The game's changing. The game's changing a lot, and Daniel Jones, the way he's moving, he's not the rushing quarterback that they wanted him to be. He's not the elusive quarterback they wanted him to be. They basically drafted Eli Manning 2.0, and it is not working out for them. He's had some flashes. I believed in him. I even had one year where I was like, he's going to surprise you. And he crapped all over the field 2 years in a row. So Daniel Jones, just not that guy. And the Giants are in a really, really, really tough spot where they really have to choose between their quarterback and their superstar running back. And if I was the Giants, I would be leaning Saquon Barkley. But you might see Saquon Barkley hit free agency. And if that's the case, that is going to send us into a frenzy of where he's going, which will be very exciting to talk about. So let's talk about Lamar Jackson as well so I can keep screaming through these points. Very quick point for him is that Lamar Jackson, if he's likely to get an exclusive rights franchise tag. So I just wanted to stop on there real quick because I do believe that Lamar will be a Raven this year. So anybody who's asked me or talked to me about where he's going, what they think is going to happen, I would like to see Lamar in Atlanta if he goes anywhere. The only thing is I think Lamar knows his best chance to win and his best chance to make maybe close to the same amount of money while having a good chance to win is in Baltimore. And I do believe that Lamar Jackson is that player. He's not just going after the bag like a Tyreek Hill did or whoever it may be. He wants to win. He wants to be the guy that you talk about 10 years from now and talk to your, tell your kids, man, you should have seen Lamar Jackson. He was insane. So I do believe Lamar wants to be in Baltimore. He just doesn't want to feel disrespected anymore by this team that has clearly disrespected him over and over and over and over again. So, shout out to Lamar for being so virtuous and saying, I really want it to work here. He's being a lot more patient than a lot of other players are. I want to see him be a Raven for, a good future while or for a long while, but he might not. And if he does, he's going to get, if they franchise tag him, they are going to give him an exclusive rights franchise tag, which means, if you do not know, it means I have rights to him, but I'm willing to let him go for this price and only this price. So they have him, but I am going to give you him for 2 picks and you have to pay his salary. So basically they're saying, I want him, but I'm willing to give him up for this. They name their price, they say that's what it is, but they do have him on the franchise tag. So if another team does reach out, they're basically trading for that same exact thing, and then they have to sign him to the long-term contract. So I'm not saying that nobody will do that. I think the Jets would do that in a heartbeat if Lamar wanted to come over to the Jets, but at the same exact time, it's not the same thing as a franchise tag. So you could hear Lamar gets franchise tag and then the next day he gets traded and you're like, what the heck was that? That's what they mean. It's exclusive rights. So they do have the rights, but they name their price basically. So it's like a lease and buyback kind of thing. Anyway, moving on to who I want to talk about, who I've been talking about a lot in the offseason. I've been telling people I don't think you're giving these people enough credit. I don't think you're giving this team enough credit. And to me personally, he was coach of the year for me. It was one of my favorite teams to watch all over the year, and I don't think people are really giving this team enough credit for what they have done in one season and one turnover, and that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was not a fluke. Maybe it was a fluke as far as scheduling and, how the odds fell and how the seeding fell, but then the Jags being in the playoffs was not a fluke. I do believe, and I am willing to double down later on in the season in the fact that the Jags will be back in the playoffs this year. The AFC is not as competitive as it was 4 or 5 years ago. You can slip into that last seed pretty easily and pretty often. So I do believe that the Jaguars are a dark horse team this year for playoffs and maybe even the Super Bowl. It's Doug Peterson, and I love Doug Peterson. I've been telling everybody Doug Peterson wouldn't have lost that game against the Chiefs. He would not have ran the ball as much as they did and ran out the clock as much as he did. He would have forced that down their throat, and he would have made Patrick Mahomes win that game on the scoreboard. So I love Doug Peterson. I've been a huge fan of Doug Peterson. I didn't think the Eagles should have let him go, and I do believe that all of Eagles Nation and anybody who didn't like Doug Peterson, you owe Doug Peterson an apology because he just took the Jags to the Super Bowl, all right? Nick Sirianni took Jalen Hurts to the Super Bowl. Who drafted Jalen Hurts? It was Doug Peterson. So, not for nothing, I think if Doug Peterson's in that game, they have a better chance of beating it because of experience. Doug Peterson was in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, right? He won a Super Bowl against Tom Brady. So if you talk about experience, and Bill Belichick, so who can best Andy Reid, who can best Patrick Mahomes, it would have been Doug Peterson. So pretty funny in hindsight that the Eagles make it with the quarterback that Doug Peterson drafted, and then they lose to a team that Doug Peterson you see what I'm getting at there. But love Doug Peterson, love the Jaguars. Evan Ingram gets a franchise tag today, and Calvin Ridley has been reinstated. He is a Jacksonville Jaguar, so this team's heating up, man, and I'm very excited to see Jacksonville after, the years and years of suffering that they've been through. They really only had, Calais Campbell and Jalen Ramsey to talk about, Allen Robinson for a little while. Besides that, they didn't really have much, and they haven't had much. So I love it. I really hope that it works out for them. I'm excited to see the Jacksonville Jaguars take it up a notch. Very excited. So let us talk a little bit before I let you go about some draft stuff. Obviously, we're going to be talking a lot about draft in the next month or so, but I really wanted to kind of take some time to talk about my thoughts and what I think is going to be happening of what I saw and what I'm seeing in the combine. First of all, Anthony Richardson is insane, and he is an athlete, right? So we talk about quarterbacks. not every quarterback looks NFL ready. When you look at wide receivers, they're more of the, NFL ready. When you can talk about that, it's easier to look at a wide receiver and be like, all right, that guy can play tomorrow. It's easier to look at a running back and go, okay, that guy can play tomorrow. Quarterback, it's really hard to tell. It's really hit or miss. But what I can say about Richardson is that he is an athlete. He is I think the best pure athlete that we see in this draft right now at the quarterback position. So with the Bryce Young talks, you got the CJ Stroud talks, the Will Grier talks. Those are the top 4 quarterbacks that everybody really likes to talk about. I do believe Anthony Richardson will be that surprise quarterback who goes first out of all of them. I don't think he'll go first overall, or I'm not sure if he'll go first overall. That's not what I'm saying. But he will be the first quarterback off the draft board, and it will be a surprise. Everybody's going to expect Bryce Young, and it's going to be Anthony Richardson. So I'm very excited for that, to see what happens. Bryce Young is slipping. He's listed at 6 feet. He did not come to combine at 6 feet. There's even pictures of him in like the pump-up shoes that are like this much higher. Hilarious. But Bryce Young is slipping. So his combine, he did not throw at, Richardson threw at the combine, and he looked absolutely great. Breaking news here. Breaking news. Josh Jacobs has been franchise tagged. So Josh Jacobs gets the franchise tag for the Raiders. Obviously, he's hanging out there with Devontae Adams and no quarterback, but you're going to have to run the ball a lot this year. So Josh Jacobs should continue to be one of the leading rushers in the NFL. He was the leader last year. So Bryce Young is slipping in the drafts. I love Anthony Richardson. I do believe he will be the first to go. He had a very, very impressive combine. That one throw down the right side of the field, that was impressive. And I know there's nobody on the field. A lot of people say that. They're like, oh, throw it to an empty field. He still made the pass. You go outside right now and throw a ball 60 yards right where you want it. Shut up. Anyway, moving on to Chicago's first overall draft pick. This is one that has been kind of thrown at me a lot. A lot of people who come into work and talk to me about football. I'm kind of like the football guy over there. They all come in, they're like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Chicago, I do believe, is going to do something with the first overall pick that is not picking a quarterback. So, I don't know actually how I'm going to put that. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I do believe that Chicago is willing to move that first overall pick, but they're not willing to go too far down. I think there's a reality where they trade that first pick and they trade Justin Fields, and they just bolster up for however long going forward. So, sorry if that was a little confusing at the beginning, but I do believe there's a reality where they do trade Justin Fields and the first overall, get some later on picks, and you get a lot of defense, a lot of wide receivers, and then they grab somebody in the second round, or they trade for somebody at quarterback, whatever it may be, or they get somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo. But I do believe that Chicago, what I would like for them to do, what I hope they do, is they trade down from the first overall and they keep rolling with Justin Fields. But very good point that I heard. I can't remember what source it was, but I remember hearing somebody say, Chicago could trade Justin Fields, get a couple more picks, then draft a quarterback at, 4 or 5, trade the first overall, and hit the reset clock on a quarterback who's very similar to Justin Fields, and I do believe that's the case. I don't think he's far off on that. The only thing is, you're putting somebody brand new into your system, whereas you can build around Justin Fields in the way that Dan Campbell wants to build around Jared Goff. Jared Goff's not the greatest quarterback in the world, but I can work with him. And like we said, there's far worse quarterbacks out there that you could have right now. So I do believe that Dan Campbell sees that angle, and I'm kind of hoping that Chicago sees that angle as well. I have some friends who are Chicago football fans, and they all say the same thing. We want Fields. And I agree. I think you should keep Fields as well. But if you could trade Fields and the Chicago's first and the first overall and still make something happen, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. Where on draft night we're going, what is Chicago doing? And then later on you're like, oh wow, look what Chicago did. The game's changing, and I think like I've talked to a lot of people, about draft. This QB situation early on is going to be interesting because we're just now leaving what I call like the golden era of drafting. The Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, even Kyler Murray in there for a little while. Like this was really like a golden age of drafting where everybody who came out was just like, the big names that came out were a next level elite that we haven't seen before. So I think that kind of ship is sailing a little bit, and teams are starting to pick up on that now where, we need to solidify something. That's why I give the Saints a lot of credit for saying, hey, let's go out there and get Derek Carr, somebody who's serviceable and we can use right now. So Very excited for draft season. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the new league year summary. Just kind of giving you my thoughts and a little bit of updates about what's been going on. Very excited to be back. This is kind of my pilot because I haven't done this in 6 months, so I'm a little rusty. Got to get my show back. Got to get all my thoughts back in order, plus my presentation. But as always, thank y'all so much for joining me. We will be back soon. I'll post a little schedule maybe on my TikTok or something. Make sure you follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Thank y'all so much. Love you. Take care. Bye-bye.